I never thought silence would hurt more than words. The day my son stopped calling me, nothing dramatic happened. There was no argument, no harsh words, no door slammed shut. It happened quietly, so quietly that, at first, I didn't even realize it was happening. I was standing in my kitchen early that morning, waiting for the kettle to boil. The same kettle I had owned for years. The same blue mug sitting by the sink. Outside, the street was waking up. A school bus passed by. A neighbor walked her dog. I picked up my phone without thinking. It was a habit I had formed over many years. Every morning before my tea, I checked my phone. Sometimes my son called before work. Sometimes he texted later in the afternoon. But there was always something. That morning there was nothing. I smiled to myself and said quietly, "He must be busy." New marriages do that. They fill up a person's time. They slowly change routines. I poured my tea and sat by the window. I didn't feel sad yet. I didn't feel worried. I had no idea that this silence would stretch into weeks, then months. For most of my life, my days moved around my son. When he was little, I waited for the sound of the front door after school. Later, I waited up for him when he stayed out late. When he moved into his own place, I waited for his calls. A mother never really stops waiting. She just learns to wait quietly. Every ring of my phone used to bring comfort. Every message made my heart feel full. That is why I didn't worry on the first day. I had learned patience the hard way. That evening I cooked dinner as usual. Nothing special, just something warm. I set the table for one, but I still cooked enough for two. Old habits stay longer than people. The first week passed gently. No phone calls. No messages. I called him once, just to check in. He answered quickly. His voice sounded kind but distracted. "Hi, Mom," he said. "I'm in the middle of something. I'll call you later." I said, "That's okay. Don't worry." And I meant it. I didn't ask questions. I didn't complain. I believed love should give space. I believed a mother should not hold on too tightly. But later never came. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I listened to the hum of the refrigerator. The house felt bigger than usual. My son's name is Daniel. I raised him mostly on my own. His father, Michael, passed away suddenly when Daniel was still young. A car accident. One phone call that changed everything. Daniel was only 7. I remember sitting beside him on the couch that evening. The TV was on, but neither of us was watching. "Mom," he asked softly, "when is Dad coming home?" I swallowed hard. I didn't know how to explain death to a child. So I said, "He lives in our hearts now." From that day on, I became everything. I worked full-time at a small office. Sometimes I cleaned houses on weekends for extra money. There were days I came home exhausted. My back hurt. My feet ached. But when Daniel ran to me and hugged my legs, none of that mattered. I packed his lunches every morning. I helped with homework at the kitchen table. I attended school meetings alone. I never complained. I never asked for sympathy. Being his mother was enough. Daniel grew into a quiet, thoughtful boy. He wasn't the loudest kid in the room. He listened more than he spoke. He helped me carry groceries. He fixed things around the house once he learned how. Sometimes he would say, "Mom, you don't have to worry. I've got this." Those words stayed with me. When he finished college and got his first job, I cried quietly in the bathroom. Not because I was sad, but because I was proud. I believed we would always stay close. Daniel met Emily at work. When he told me about her, he smiled in a way I hadn't seen before. "She's kind," he said. "She listens." That was all I needed to hear. When they decided to get married, I supported them fully. I helped plan the wedding. I welcomed Emily into our family. I told her, "This is your home too." I meant it. I believed love grows when it is shared. After the wedding, things changed slowly. Not in obvious ways. Just small shifts. Daniel stopped coming by as often. When he did, he stayed shorter. He still hugged me. Still asked how I was. But his mind always seemed elsewhere. At dinner, his phone stayed on the table. He checked it often. Emily was polite. Always respectful. But we never really talked. I told myself this was normal. New marriages need time and space. Still, a quiet feeling settled in my chest. Weeks passed. The calls became less frequent. I found myself checking my phone more often. Every vibration made my heart jump. Sometimes it was just a spam call. Sometimes a wrong number. I laughed at myself and shook my head. Get a grip, I told myself. I didn't want to seem needy. I didn't want to push him away. So I stayed quiet. That is how mothers fade into the background. By choosing peace over honesty. One afternoon, I was folding laundry in the living room. I picked up one of Daniel's old hoodies, the one he used to wear all the time. I held it for a moment longer than necessary. Memories came rushing back. School mornings, weekend movies, late night talks. My eyes filled with tears, but I didn't let them fall. I told myself, this is how life works. But my heart wasn't ready to accept that yet. That night, as I turned off the lights, I felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, not jealousy, just a quiet fear. The fear of slowly becoming someone who is remembered only on holidays. After a while, the silence stopped feeling temporary. First, silence feels like a pause. Something you expect will end. Later, it feels like a pattern. Something you learn to live around. Weeks passed. Then another month. I stopped counting the days since Daniel last called me. Counting only made my heart heavy. Still, every morning I checked my phone. Not because I expected anything, but because hope is stubborn. The house felt different during the day. The ticking clock sounded louder. Even the walls felt quiet. I tried to keep myself busy. I cleaned more than usual. I reorganized drawers that didn't need organizing. At night, the silence felt heavier. I told myself something over and over again. Don't interfere. That was the word people always used. Interfere. As if a mother's presence was an interruption. Daniel was married now. He had his own home. His own life. I reminded myself that calling too often might push him away. That asking questions might sound like criticism. So I chose restraint. I answered when he called. I smiled when he visited. I never said how lonely I felt. That is reducing yourself slowly, so others don't feel uncomfortable. One Sunday afternoon, Daniel and Emily came over. I had cleaned the house early that morning. I baked a simple cake. Nothing fancy. When they arrived, Daniel hugged me quickly. Emily smiled politely. We sat in the living room. The television was on, but nobody watched it. Conversation stayed light. Work, traffic, weather. Daniel checked his phone a few times. Each time I pretended not to notice. After less than an hour, Daniel stood up. We should get going, he said. I nodded. Of course. I watched them walk to the door. I watched him put on his jacket. At the door he turned and said, Call me if you need anything, Mom. I smiled. I will. But we both knew I wouldn't. There were rules now. Unspoken ones. Don't call too early. Don't call too late. Don't call too often. I didn't know when those rules were made. I was never informed, but I followed them anyway. Sometimes I picked up the phone, typed a message, then deleted it. What would I even say? I asked myself, how are you? Felt unnecessary. I miss you felt too heavy, so I said nothing. Emily was never unkind to me. That made it harder. If she had been rude, I could have blamed her. But she was polite. Distant but polite. When we spoke, our conversation stayed shallow. We talked about work, about errands, about plans. We never talked about feelings. I noticed she never encouraged Daniel to call me, but she never stopped him either. She simply lived her life. And maybe that was the problem. There was no villain in this story, just people moving forward, while someone was left standing still. One evening I felt unwell. Nothing serious, just dizziness and fatigue. In the past, Daniel would have been my first call. He would have insisted on coming over. He would have worried. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and held my phone. I stared at his name. Then I put the phone down. I didn't want to bother him. I didn't want to seem weak. I went to bed early instead. That was the moment I realized something important. I was no longer his first thought. And he was no longer my first call. At night, memories came quietly. Daniel learning to ride a bike. Daniel asking me to check under the bed for monsters. Daniel calling me from college just to talk. Those memories felt warm, but also painful, because they reminded me of what was missing. I wondered if he remembered those moments too, or if they had faded for him, the way his calls had faded for me. One afternoon, Daniel called unexpectedly. My heart jumped. "Hi, Mom," he said. His voice sounded rushed. "I just wanted to let you know we won't be able to come by for a while. Things are busy." I said, "That's okay." Then he added, "You understand, right?" That question stayed with me, because understanding had become my role. "I understand," I said. We hung up shortly after. I sat there holding the phone long after the call ended. Understanding, I realized, is sometimes just another word for silence. I stopped expecting holidays to be the same. Thanksgiving felt quieter. Christmas felt shorter. They came by but briefly. There was always another place to be. I smiled through it all. I handed out gifts. I hugged them goodbye. Then I stood at the door alone. I learned how to disappear without leaving. One evening after a long day, I went for a walk. It was drizzling lightly. The streetlights promised warmth but offered none. As I walked, I realized something. I wasn't angry. I was grieving. Grieving a relationship that was still technically there, but emotionally distant. That kind of grief has no funeral, no sympathy cards. It lives quietly inside you. That night, as rain tapped gently on my window, I accepted a painful truth. My son hadn't stopped loving me. He had simply moved on, without noticing that I was still standing in the same place. Waiting changes a person. First, waiting feels hopeful. You expect something good to happen. Later, waiting feels heavy, like carrying a bag you never put down. I found myself waiting for things that never came. A call, a message, a simple check-in. I didn't wait by the phone anymore. But somewhere inside me, I was always listening. Every sound in the house felt louder. The washing machine, the clock, the wind against the windows. Silence became my background noise. One afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in my hand. I had already typed Daniel's number. My finger hovered over the call button. I thought about what I would say. I thought about how my voice might sound. Then I imagined his reply. Not rude, not unkind, just busy. "I'll call you later, Mom." I deleted the number and locked my phone. That was the day I stopped dialing first. Not because I didn't care, but because caring without being seen starts to hurt too much. Once I stopped calling, questions filled the silence. Had I been too present? Too available? Too involved? Did I talk too much when he visited? Did I expect too much without realizing it? I replayed moments from the past. Small comments. Small expressions. Nothing stood out. Nothing explained the distance. That confused me more. Because when there is no clear reason, you start blaming yourself. One morning, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked older than I remembered. Not just in my face, but in my posture. I realized I had been shrinking, lowering my voice, shortening my sentences, making myself easier to overlook. I asked myself a simple question. When did I stop believing I mattered? The answer scared me. Slowly, quietly, without protest. One afternoon, my neighbor Susan stopped me outside. She smiled warmly and asked, "How's Daniel doing?" I hesitated. "He's fine," I said. She nodded. "You must see him all the time." I smiled politely. "Yes," I said. The lie slipped out easily. After she walked away, I felt a strange mix of shame and sadness. Not because I lied to her, but because I was protecting a truth. That hurt me. The breaking point did not come with tears. It came with exhaustion. One evening I sat on the couch and realized I was tired of pretending everything was okay. Tired of being understanding. Tired of being patient. Tired of being invisible. I wasn't angry at Daniel. I wasn't angry at Emily. I was angry at myself for disappearing quietly. That was the moment something shifted inside me. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't confront anyone. I simply stopped waiting. I stopped checking my phone first thing in the morning. I stopped rearranging my days around possible visits. I filled my time differently. I joined a small community book group. I went for longer walks. I cooked meals just for myself. Felt strange at first, like learning how to live again. One night I wrote Daniel a letter. Not to accuse, not to guilt, just to speak. I wrote about missing him, about how quiet the house felt, about how proud I still was. I read it once. Then I folded it and placed it in a drawer. Some truths don't need to be delivered. They just need to be acknowledged. As weeks passed, something unexpected happened. The pain softened. Not because things changed, but because I changed. I realized that my love for Daniel did not depend on his attention. It existed on its own. That realization brought peace. One night my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Daniel. It was late. Later than usual. I answered calmly. Hi, Mom. His voice sounded tired. Different. We talked for a few minutes. Nothing deep. Before hanging up, he said, Thanks for always understanding. After the call ended, I sat quietly. Understanding, I realized, should never cost you your voice. That night, I admitted something to myself. My son did not mean to hurt me, but intention does not erase impact. And love without presence still feels like absence. Accepting that truth hurt, but it also freed me. As I turned off the lights that night, I felt something new. Not hope, not sadness, just clarity. I could love my son deeply, without losing myself. Something changed after that late-night call. Not in Daniel. In me. I stopped carrying my phone from room to room. I stopped waiting for the sound of it. Mornings felt calmer. Not easier. Just calmer. I learned how to enjoy my own company again. I drank my tea slowly. I listened to music while cooking. The house no longer felt like it was holding its breath. One afternoon a few weeks later, Daniel called. His voice sounded different. Careful. Thoughtful. Mom, he said. Emily and I were wondering if you'd like to come over for dinner on Friday. I paused. Not because I didn't want to go, but because I didn't want to hope too much. I'd like that, I said. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a long moment. I didn't rush to plan. I didn't overthink. I told myself, just go as you are. Friday came slowly. I chose a simple outfit. Nothing special. When I arrived at their place, Emily opened the door with a warm smile. Hi, she said. Come in. Their home felt lived in. Clean but comfortable. Daniel hugged me longer than usual. I noticed that. We sat at the dining table. The food smelled good. Conversation flowed gently. No tension. No rush. For the first time in a long while, I felt present. After dinner, Emily and I stood in the kitchen together. Daniel stepped outside to take a phone call. For a moment, it was just the two of us. Emily hesitated, then spoke. I hope you know, she said softly. I never wanted you to feel left out. I looked at her. She continued. I thought giving space was the respectful thing to do. Her words surprised me. I nodded. I understand, I said. And I did. That night, as I drove home, I realized something important. Everyone had been trying to do the right thing. Daniel was trying to be a good husband. Emily was trying to be respectful. And I was trying to be understanding. But no one had talked. Silence had filled the gaps. And silence, I learned, can be misunderstood. A few days later, Daniel called again. This time his voice was calm. Mom, he said. Emily and I talked. I listened. I didn't realize how much distance had grown, he said. I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't interrupt. I'm sorry, he added. I never meant to make you feel forgotten. My eyes filled with tears, but my voice stayed steady. Thank you for saying that, I replied. That was enough. Things did not change overnight. We didn't suddenly talk every day. We didn't go back to the way things were. But something shifted. Daniel called more often, sometimes just for a few minutes. I stopped holding back my feelings completely. I allowed myself to be honest gently. Emily started including me more. Small gestures, a message, an invite. Healing, I learned, is not loud. It grows slowly. I let go of the idea that things had to be the same as before. Life moves forward. Relationships change shape. That doesn't mean love disappears. It just learns how to fit into a new space. I found a balance between being present and giving space. I stopped measuring love by frequency. I measured it by intention. When Daniel called, I listened. When he didn't, I lived my life. That balance gave me peace. That night, as I sat by my window, watching the lights outside, I felt something gentle settle in my chest. Not joy, not relief, just acceptance. Life never goes backward, doesn't return things to how they were. It only moves forward, asking us to move with it. Once I accepted that truth, everything became lighter. Daniel was no longer the little boy who ran to me after school. He was a husband now, a man building his own life. And I was no longer the center of his world. That realization hurt at first, but it also felt honest. I forgave Daniel long before he apologized. Not because he didn't need forgiveness, but because holding pain inside me was hurting only one person, me. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean pretending nothing happened. It meant choosing peace over replaying the past. And peace is something you give yourself. Our relationship changed. We didn't talk every day. We didn't share every detail. But when we talked, we were present. There was no rushing, no distraction. Sometimes Daniel asked me questions again. Real ones. How are you really feeling, Mom? What have you been doing lately? Those questions mattered. Not because of how often they came, but because of how sincerely they were asked. Emily and I found our own rhythm. We weren't close in a dramatic way, but we were respectful. Sometimes she called to ask for advice. Sometimes she shared small updates. I stopped expecting her to fill a role. I let her be herself. That made space for understanding. My house feels quieter now, but not empty. I learned how to fill it with my own presence. Music in the mornings, books in the afternoon. I started inviting friends over again. I stopped saving the good dishes for someday. I realized something important. Life doesn't wait for family to show up before it starts happening. One evening, months later, Daniel called. No reason, no problem, just to talk. We laughed about something small. I don't even remember what. Before hanging up, he said, "I'm glad you're doing well, Mom." I smiled. "So am I said. And I meant it. I learned that motherhood doesn't end, but it must change. Holding on too tightly can hurt everyone. Letting go gently keeps love alive. I learned that silence can mean many things. Not all of them are rejection. Sometimes people don't leave because they don't care. They leave because they don't realize someone is waiting. If you are listening to this and feeling that quiet ache in your chest, I want you to hear this. You are not forgotten. You are not replaceable. You are not invisible. Your love mattered. It shaped a life, even if it is not acknowledged every day. And if you are a son or daughter listening, remember this. Your parents don't always ask for much. Sometimes they just want to be remembered. A call, a message, a moment. Those small things mean more than you know. The day my son stopped calling me was not the end of our relationship. It was the end of one version of it. What followed was something quieter, more mature, less dependent, and somehow more honest. Today I still wait sometimes, not with pain, but with openness. If the phone rings, I answer with love. If it doesn't, I live my life fully. Because love should never require you to disappear. It should grow as both people change. And that is the quiet lesson my silence taught me.